She didn't love you. She used you, and deep down, a part of you already knows it, but you've been too afraid to face the truth, because facing it means admitting that what you gave was real, and what you received was just performance, a transaction, a cold exchange cloaked in warmth that was never meant for you, and this brutal realization is the beginning of freedom, not despair, because once you see through illusion, you gain power, and in that moment, you become untouchable. You're not the first to be deceived by affection that looked like love but functioned like currency, and you won't be the last. But if you don't learn to spot the signs now, it'll happen again, worse next time, because you'll be more invested, more blind, more hopeful. So before it's too late, ask yourself this: did she ever truly see you, or did she just see what she could extract from you? The Stoics warned us to never place our happiness in the hands of others, especially not in the hands of those who profit from our weakness. Epictetus said, "Only the educated are free," and education begins with emotional clarity. If she never loved you, here's how you can tell. First, her attention was inconsistent but strategic. When she needed something, she became a different person, warmer, softer, more engaged, and you mistook that for care, but it was bait. She knew how to speak your language just well enough to keep you locked in, and you fell for it because you wanted to believe that the sudden affection was real, but real love doesn't flicker with convenience. It burns steadily even when nothing's on the line. Marcus Aurelius warned, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," and she dyed her soul with manipulation while you painted yours with hope. A woman who truly loves you doesn't vanish when you have nothing to offer. She leans in closer, stays present, holds space, but she disappeared at the first sign of discomfort, dodged your pain, changed the subject, withheld touch or time or empathy unless it served her. That's not love. That's control dressed as intimacy. Second, you were always auditioning. You felt the need to prove your worth, upgrade yourself, please her standards, jump through shifting hoops just to maintain basic emotional connection. You adjusted your speech, your plans, your goals, your values, not out of growth but out of fear. Fear of losing her, fear of not being enough, fear that if you stopped performing, she'd stop pretending to care. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free," but you weren't free. You were compliant, desperate, anxious, and she liked you that way because a man who's constantly doubting himself is easier to extract from. You mistook obedience for love and sacrifice for devotion, but none of it was mutual because she never changed a damn thing for you. Did she ever ask you what you wanted? Did she ever pause and say, "How are you doing really?" No, because your feelings were never the point. Her validation was the prize, and you kept running in circles for it like a dog chasing a bone that was never meant to be caught. Third, your pain bored her. You might have opened up about your past, your struggles, your moments of self-doubt, and maybe she listened the first time, nodded along, played the part, but slowly as the facade wore thin, you saw it. The disinterest, the shift in her eyes, the subtle dismissal. She didn't ask follow-ups. She changed the topic. She forgot. Because your wounds didn't feed her, your strength did. Your image, your utility. A woman who uses you has no patience for your healing unless it makes her look like a savior. Real love stays in the room when things get dark. Real love sits in silence with you, not because it needs content, but because presence is content. Did she sit in that silence? Or did she fill it with noise, deflection, or worse, silence of her own that punished you for being vulnerable? You thought she was just bad at emotional stuff, but no, she was precise, selective. Her emotional availability wasn't broken, it was weaponized. Fourth, you were never celebrated, only tolerated. The Stoics teach us to focus on internal virtue over external applause, but love, real love, still sees us. It still mirrors our worth back to us. Did she ever look at you with pride, with genuine admiration for your growth, your character, your essence? Or did she treat your achievements like footnotes, your milestones like routine, your passions like chores? You probably tried to share something you were excited about, and she gave you that empty cool, or a fake smile, or a topic change, and yet when she needed the spotlight, you became her biggest cheerleader, didn't you? You gave her energy even when you were drained, gave her comfort when you had none for yourself. And what did you get in return? A tepid clap? A nice comment? Or worse, a reminder that someone else does it better? A woman who loves you celebrates your wins as if they're her own. A woman who uses you treats your wins like threats. And the worst part is you started shrinking yourself so she wouldn't feel insecure. You watered down your light to keep her from casting shade. That's not love. That's self-erasure. And the Stoics would spit at that kind of existence. You weren't born to shrink for anyone's comfort. You weren't born to orbit someone else's ego. You were born to stand tall in your truth and attract someone who wants to stand beside that. And fifth, this is the most damning, you were exhausted all the time. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, existentially depleted. You started losing pieces of yourself and didn't even notice because she kept you busy solving her problems, soothing her moods, chasing her highs. That's the cruel trick of emotional leeches. They don't take everything all at once. They nibble at your soul until you forget what wholeness even feels like. She trained you to see survival as love. But look at yourself now. Were you ever really happy or just distracted? Did she bring you peace or adrenaline? Stillness or confusion? The Stoics sought tranquility as the highest goal. Not passion, not excitement, not drama, but inner stillness. She gave you none of that. She gave you chaos in pretty packaging. And you stayed, thinking the storm was a test of loyalty, but it wasn't. It was a warning. A soul aligned with yours won't drain you. It will calm you. It will sharpen your discipline, expand your clarity, reinforce your boundaries, not dissolve them. If you're always tired, always questioning, always bracing yourself for the next emotional withdrawal or cold shoulder or passive punishment, then you're not loved. You're used. And maybe you're angry now or ashamed. Maybe you're thinking, how did I let this happen? But that's good. That's where your power returns. Because awareness is the beginning of freedom, and detachment is the Stoic path to liberation. You were never weak, you were just hoping too hard. Love doesn't live in hope. It lives in evidence. And now you have it. So what do you do next? You stop begging for someone to choose you when they never saw you as human in the first place. You go inward. You train your mind. You sit with your grief and study its shape like Marcus studied the stars, quietly, precisely, without flinching. And then you rebuild, but not the way you were before, because the version of you that tolerated that kind of treatment doesn't deserve to survive this awakening. You become unrecognizable to your past self, sharper, calmer, slower to give, impossible to manipulate, and more dangerous in your silence than you ever were in your pleading. You don't jump to explain yourself anymore. You don't rush to fix things that aren't your responsibility. You don't perform. You don't audition. You walk into the room like your presence is the answer, not a question. You become what the Stoics call autarkia, self-sufficient, emotionally sovereign, complete. And you start to realize, she never broke your heart, she revealed it. She showed you how deeply you were willing to love, how far you were willing to go for someone who gave nothing in return, how much you were capable of feeling without reciprocation. That wasn't a waste. That was data. That was proof of your strength. You were not weak for staying, you were strong enough to endure, but now, finally, you must be stronger than your hope. Because hope, when blind, becomes a prison. Stoicism doesn't ask you to give up love. It demands that you give up attachment to what isn't real. The greatest Stoic revenge isn't anger or retaliation, it's indifference. And don't confuse that with bitterness. Indifference doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop bleeding for people who feed on your wounds. You stop offering your depth to those who only want your surface. You stop shrinking your needs to fit someone else's narrative. You return to yourself like a man stepping out of fog into sharp morning air. And you start observing people, not through the lens of their words, but through the pattern of their energy. You notice who checks in when you're silent, who listens when you're not impressive, who shows up when there's no spotlight. And you let your solitude become the filter that reveals what connection is actually worth. Epictetus reminded us, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. So judge this relationship clearly. It was a transaction disguised as a romance, a self-serving performance designed to extract from you emotional labor, financial support, social clout, or maybe just the ego rush of being needed. And the longer you tell yourself she might have loved you, the longer you remain trapped in the most seductive lie, that you just weren't good enough to make her stay. But listen carefully, it was never about being good enough. It was about being useful. And when your usefulness expired, so did her warmth. That's not your failure. That's her revelation. You gave someone love they couldn't even comprehend, and now your job is not to reclaim that person. It's to reclaim that love and aim it inward. Because you've been starving for the very thing you gave away. The affection, the patience, the attentiveness. You handed it out freely, even recklessly, but now it must return home. Your healing begins the moment you stop asking why she didn't love you and start asking why you loved someone who didn't know how. And yes, it will sting. The detox always does. Withdrawal from fantasy can feel like grief, but grief is sacred. It's proof that you lived deeply, felt bravely, dared greatly. Let it hurt. Let it hollow you out. Let it teach you. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So let her absence become your path, not a wound, but a window. Let it sharpen your discernment, reinforce your standards, carve your silence into power. You don't need closure. You need clarity. And here it is. She never loved you. But you did. You loved. You showed up. You cared without calculation. And in a world of takers, that makes you rare, not broken. The only mistake was handing your gold to someone who trades in counterfeit. But now you know the currency of real connection. You know the price of peace. And you know, above all, that the person you were during that chapter deserves more than a footnote. He deserves a future that reflects the depth of his past, not repeats it. So next time, you won't confuse attention for affection. You won't call manipulation romance. You won't chase validation that comes with conditions. You'll sit in your stillness like the Stoics did, in quiet command, alert, free, untouchable. Because you're not here to be used. You're here to live wisely, love deeply, and walk away quickly from anything that asks you to beg. If you've ever felt the weight of false love, it's time to let that weight build muscle, not memory. And if you've read this far, something inside you already knows. You're done being a resource for people who don't even see your soul. You're done being someone's emotional crutch, financial plan, or ego trophy. You're done not because you've given up on love, but because you're finally learning to love without losing yourself. Now subscribe, not because you're told, but because something in this truth struck a nerve, and you know this is only the beginning.